Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Flying Goat Farm podcast with me, Lisa Check. Today, we're going to be doing a little something different, and this is a topic that I have been thinking about and talking about with other artists. Who are you now? So let's just dive right in. Here's what's happening on the farm. So as I'm taping this, it's the end of July, and we are in the midst of a whole bunch of different kinds of harvests. We have new onions, we have tomatoes of all sorts and sizes. We have lots of zucchini still, a few beans. I don't know quite what's happening with those. And I think I probably have said this before. I am not the gardener. I don't like weeding things. And so that's really Bill's purview. He loves plants. And if you could see the room that I'm in right now, I'm surrounded by probably 100 baby orchids and one Christmas cactus. And all those baby orchids are in a couple of different aquariums. Bill loves his plants. So that's what's happening on the farm right now. So yeah, 18 months ago now, just about, is when like the world changed, right? And this is what I've been talking about with my artist friends is there's a person that we used to be, and then this pandemic happened, and now who are we? So 18 months ago, who were you then? I mean, for me, we were going to shows, and I was doing trunk shows at different local yarn stores, and people would come over here every once in a while to shop, but not very often. And I had a few online sales, but not that many. But now it's totally different. Now it's a lot of people come more than once a month. I have open studios once a month. People come in between times. I am mostly dying to order unless I get some like really fantastic idea that just needs to be put onto yarn. And things are just kind of have slowed down. And amidst this pandemic, during the shutdown, I'm an introvert. So, like, I felt like my life mostly didn't change. If you were an extrovert, though, I bet it really did. And I have always worried about my friends who live by themselves because during that time you were isolated and you had a TV and maybe you had some Zoom calls, but you didn't really have a whole lot of interaction with other people. And if you have a large family, you had a lot of family togetherness, right? And that can be a little bit anxiety producing, changing the way that we eat. If you have a large family, you probably were going from making like one meal a day, probably dinner and maybe like a light breakfast, to making 3 meals a day. I mean, even for me, with Bill being home working, now I had to think more about having all those meals at home, who was going to be doing that, what was going to happen with that. And then families that were apart as well. My family is mostly in California and Oregon, and I haven't seen them in over 2 years because we didn't know that this was going to be happening. I've seen them on Zoom. I think we've all done those things, having game night on Zoom and things like that. But it's not the same as like sitting on the couch, drinking coffee together, eating ice cream together, all those kind of great memory making times that we have together. And now, are you working from home? Is your significant other working from home? Um, that has been a little bit nerve wracking and anxiety producing as well. Um, I'm, you know, don't tell Bill, but I'm kind of looking forward to him going back to working, not at home. Um, it is a little bit more anxiety producing. And then there were the people that were not working because their jobs evaporated because they were in, a service industry, or were you or your significant family members working in danger, first line, first responders, people in hospitals, um, uh, people in grocery stores. We heard lots of stories of people living in campers in their driveway because they didn't want to infect the rest of the family. Just all of those things, they change you, they change your personality, they change your outlook, they change so much about you. And then school, oh my gosh, don't even get me started about that. I can't tell you how glad I am that I had left my teaching position the year before this happened. And just the amount of anxiety produced not only by the teachers were feeling, but our children as well, and especially children, young children, who really need to have that one-on-one time with a teacher, that really need to have FaceTime, and I don't mean on an iPhone, really having, connection to their teachers in order for them to learn. And so many families who, for whatever reason, may not have internet. It may not be available in their neighborhood, right? Or it might not be available because of their circumstances, and just to be left behind, and how that makes a child feel, how that makes parents feel and families feel. And of course, there was silver lining. I have to say, because I'm an introvert, I didn't experience a lot of the anxiety of some of my friends, and because of Zoom, I was able to get back to meeting with my weaving community in California. I was able to invite back people in my community that had moved away, so that we were having these Zoom meetings and everybody was invited to the party, and it was really wonderful to be able to reconnect with friends that you haven't seen for a long time, and connect on that kind of that artistic creative level too, to be inspired by them, and vice versa. So that, I think, really has been a silver lining for me, at least. Then there was the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, let's all get vaccines. And people were anxious about vaccines. And then there was the Hunger Games of the appointments, and, trying to find something in your age group and in your neighborhood. And would there be a big line? Or at one point, because Bill has all these computers for his work, and we also have personal computers, he had 4 different computers, all ready to, all he had to do was to click to get into 4 different pharmacy systems or the big mass vaccination sites, in order to find an appointment for himself. And thankfully, he was able to do that. When my time came to do that, it was much easier for me. I think I only had to try a couple of days, and it just happened to be when they were opening a lot more of the pharmacy locations, and so I was able to get in. But now what? We have lots of people in our community who are, for whatever reasons, are not able to take the vaccine. who aren't willing to take the vaccine, who don't have access to the vaccine because of transportation issues or work issues. And how do we know who has it? How do we know who doesn't have it? How are we going to be safe? All these decisions are, swirling around us. And again, they're changing our personalities. They're changing our outlook on life. They're changing fundamentally who we are. And all the news programs are talking about it's the new reality. It's the new normal. But are we really there yet? Yes, people are starting to emerge. But again, we are different people than we were back then. And we may be an amalgamation of two selves, like you may an amalgamation of your pre-pandemic self and your pandemic self. And maybe there's also a third one, this emergent pandemic self. And are you going to become this amalgam? Do you think that you can go back to the way that you were, the things that you did, the things you liked, the ways you behaved, the ways you interacted with people 18 months ago, as if the pandemic never happened? What's going to happen? It's not really clear yet what is going to be our new normal as an individual, as a person. And of course, now is the time for all these decisions, especially in light of this Delta variant, and there will be other variants as well coming down the pike. Do we go out to eat, or do we still do takeout? What about doctor's appointments or going for cancer screenings and things like that? One of my doctor's appointments was one of the scariest times that I had this whole time, because it was a very small waiting room. There was one chair between each person, but in that small waiting room, there were 8 people. And I felt extremely uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do about it. I figured it out after the whole, after the appointment. I thought to myself, if this happens again and I feel uncomfortable, I could have just gone outside the door, and I could have told the receptionist, when they call me, I'm going to be standing outside the door. I'm going to stand outside. That would have made me feel a whole lot more comfortable, because again, I was monitoring my health, 8 days, all the days up to 2 weeks later, to say, am I going to get something? Because there were all, I was probably the youngest person in the room, and you all know that I'm not that young. And, and, any of those people could have been exposed by their caregivers and things like that. And then what are we going to do about these crafty meetings? Like, am I going to still be able to meet with my LA friends? Are they still going to include me? And there's 5 other past Seasiders. That's what we call Seaside Weavers. There's 5 of us, 2 here in the DC area, someone in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Oregon. So eventually they're going to want to go back to meeting in person, and then what's going to happen to us? So we've been talking a little bit about that. What's going to happen with my Crafternoon? Am I going to still include Ellen on a call, on a Zoom, while we have our in-person Crafternoon? And so far we have done that. We've had 2 Crafternoons where we have been in person, and we've had Ellen on the Zoom on the computer. And so that has been really nice. And I hope that there's some kind of way that happens for the Seaside people. And what about travel? I know people are starting to travel. We've been hearing some nightmares about the airlines not having enough workers. And so a lot of flights are getting canceled. A lot of flights are being delayed. I think that's, all the anger of people on the airplanes, anger about having to wear the masks. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I know we have a big European trip that was postponed a couple of times already. That's supposed to be next year. And, will we be able to leave the country? Will we be able to get into Europe? Will we be able to come back? What will we have to do? I'm sure there's going to be testing involved, and I'm sure we're going to have to show our vaccine papers. And that's still 6 months out. So it's hard to know, where is the world going to be then? There's so much uncertainty still. And then family meetings, people getting together with their families, which is awesome. We've done a couple of things like that with Bill's family that is in Pennsylvania and in the Annapolis area. And that has been really nice to be able to get together in person and, play a game or, eat a meal and feel like we're getting back to normal again. But there's still fear and anxiety, right? It's kind of like, in a way, it's a little bit like at the beginning, at last March and April, because these variants, they're telling us they are so much more virulent than the original. And again, it's not something that we can see. It's not something we can feel. You can't tell if somebody has it that's next to you in the plane, in the hotel, at the bar, or at the grocery store. You can't know that. So it is, just this another level of fear going through us. And, what does that do to us and to our kids and to those that are already at so much risk of mental health problems? It's just, again, it's something that we need to address as individuals and families, and probably governmentally or society, I can say that word, in our society, looking at those questions. How do we take care of other people's and our own mental health at these times of risk? When school's going to be starting up, are our children going to feel safe? Or are they not going to feel safe? Are we going to feel safe sending them off to school? Or are we going to feel unsafe about that? And then let's just get to crafting. So has your crafting changed in this last 18 months? Have you decided to make something different or learn a new technique? Or are you still doing the same, making your socks, making your sweaters, making your shawls? Or have you just abandoned crafting altogether? Again, crafting can be so great for our mental health, for our outlook. And but at the same time, sometimes it takes a little optimism to get started. And if you're not exactly feeling optimistic, it can be really difficult. Are you using your collection? I hope you're shopping your collection. That would be good. Or are you buying online? And then festivals. So the festivals are going to be starting to open up. We're hoping here in our area that the Shenandoah show, which happens in the end of September, is going to keep going. And the Rhinebeck show is supposed to be going, and those tickets are already sold out. And the alpaca show that's in November is also going to be doing an in-person one, as far as we know. Again, things can change on a dime, right? But how will they be different? I know at Rhinebeck, everybody gets one booth space. So people or companies that had 2 or 3 booth spaces are no longer going to be having that. Some of them will be some of us will have to be moved outside so that there's enough kind of social distance between booths. But are you going to feel comfortable going into a 10 by 10 booth? People are going to be wearing masks. There's going to be some limiting of people. But if that booth is crowded, are you going to go in or are you going to pass it by? If that booth has like 1 or 2 people in there, plus the sales staff, which is usually 1 or 2 people, that could potentially be feeling like it's crowded. Are you going, how are you going to deal with that? Have you thought about it at all? It'll be really interesting to see what the experience is like. It may just really slow you down. There may not be the frenzy of having to be in the booths that are the most busy. Maybe it will actually slow you down and maybe make the festival more enjoyable. I certainly hope so. We shall see, I guess. And then there's studio sales. So this is the best of both worlds, right? You can take your time. You can squish. You can revel in the color. You can dream about things that you want to make. You can see some great samples. You can consider your purchase, and you get to connect with the artists themselves. So, and I put studio sales here, and I guess I probably should have included, your local yarn store as well. But I'm being focused on what we do, and we're doing these open studio sales once a month, typically mid-month. And so people can come by, they can come in, they can sit on the porch and knit or spin and still have some nice connection time. So next time I'm going to really be focusing on defeating overwhelm at the festivals. And so I hope you'll listen into that podcast as well. If you have any ideas or thoughts about what I've just talked about who you are now 18 months after being stuck at home, I'd love to hear what you have to say. So leave a comment or leave a review on iTunes or Spotify. We'd love to have that connection as well. So until next time, happy making.